Have you ever wondered what would happen if our world was engulfed in nuclear fire? If you have, then I strongly urge you to reconsider, as there is no point to it, because we all know
Nothing ever happens.
what we can do, however, is play games about it. Post-apocalyptic games have existed since the beginning of time, but few have managed to leave a unique mark on the genre, which is no easy task considering how saturated the whole thing is. One such franchise is, of course, Metro, a somewhat loose adaptation of the novel series bearing the same name, written by one Dmitry Glukovsky, who also serves as one of the writers on the games themselves. Metro combines two of the most incomprehensibly horrifying inventions of mankind into one neat package that somehow manages to walk the fine line between exploring deep and personal themes surrounding humanity itself and complete utter batshit insanity that makes you wonder if Michael Bay himself just barged into 4A Games' headquarters one day, delivering an experience unlike any other. So today we will take a look at the second game in the franchise, Metro Last Light. Why, you may ask? Because it's the only one I currently have installed at hand, and I'm flat broke, so I can't afford more internet to download the others right now. Anyway, Last Light, just like its predecessor, is a first-person shooter developed by 4A Games, set in the post-apocalyptic ruins of Russia. You play as Artyom, who during the events of the first game became Metro Jesus, saving all of Metro from a bunch of hostile mutants who can seemingly mess with people's minds, causing insanity, with many resulting in random fits of violence against their own allies, called the Dark Ones. Not alone, of course. He had help from a highly trained militarized group that goes around helping and protecting various settlements led by one Colonel Miller, called Spartan Rangers. Apart from them, there's one another key figure who helps out, called Khan, who believes the Dark Ones aren't hostile but misunderstood in their attempts to do something we don't understand, which is what causes the aforementioned insanity. Now, Last Light picks up a year after the events of 2033, which ended with the Rangers taking over a super secret government bunker called D6, and the nuking of the botanical gardens, seemingly eliminating all the Dark Ones. The game starts with a bit of a recap showcasing the Dark Ones' power and hinting where Artyom might have received his mysterious link to them that keeps him safe from their influence. Returning to the present scenario, Khan informs us that the missiles apparently didn't kill every Dark One, as he saw one of them on the surface, and asks that we try to make contact with it. This is what kicks off the main story, as against Khan's request, Miller orders you to hunt the Dark One down so his daughter Anna can 360 no-scope it. Right off the bat, something that stands out is just how detailed the environments are. Even just the introductory walk to Miller's office feels so atmospheric, rich with world-building elements like hearing random banter from other Rangers, or watching them train, or hearing to music. It's very reminiscent of the intro to Half-Life 2, as Half-Life 2 was a very clear inspiration for this game, and it does a masterful job of capturing a similar feel akin to arriving in City 17 for the first time, and getting to walk around taking in all the detail before the first combat sequence happens. It does a phenomenal job of immersing you into this world the devs put their heart and soul into, that even on repeat playthroughs doesn't feel tedious. It's like sex. Sure, there's the seemingly boring part about undressing and taking position before the docking procedure takes place, but it helps build the atmosphere, which sets the feel right, so the whole thing works way better. Anyway, once you get to the surface, we get our very first snippet of the combat and Anna's sniping skills, which yeah. We also get some live test of some of the other mechanics in the game that we were told about before, a notable one being the gas masks. See, after the world was thrown into the microwave, the air above was left in a pretty rough state, making it impossible for people to breathe, so everyone wears gas masks when above. The main thing you need to watch out for in this case is the oxygen time limit, which isn't exactly limitless, so you need to be resourceful or risk death. This also encourages exploration because there's tons of spare supplies lying in areas off the beaten path that you can completely miss. But even that doesn't mean you can find a near infinite supply of filters to keep you going forever, so the sense of urgency still remains. It's perfectly balanced, your urge to explore but also put on a leash, to make sure the feeling of vulnerability isn't completely thrown out of the window. Another hiccup you need to worry about is crack. No, not that crack, I mean literal cracks. If you take damage while wearing a mask, it'll slowly start cracking. The more damage you tank, the more the cracks, and the quicker the oxygen filters run out. which once again urges you to look for more filters as well as intact gas masks to reduce further penalties. Now, if you take too much damage, your mask cracks entirely, after which you need to find another one as quick as possible or die. And just like the filters, spare masks are limited too, so you can't keep cracking them forever, hoping the game will just keep forgiving you. This essentially warrants you to be more careful during combat areas that do need a mask. There's also night vision goggles you can find later in the game, but honestly I have no idea what's the point of them. They are supposed to make it easy for you to locate things in the darkness, but the game isn't really all that dark. Even when all the lights are turned off, it's not that hard to spot things, especially enemies, most of whom have these big lighted helmets like 90% of the time, as if encouraging you to shoot them in their dome. So unless you crank your brightness all the way down to -50 or something, there's not much of a reason to wear these night vision goggles. Anyway, that's it for goggles and masks, but of course that's not all. Some of the other mechanics you get to test out in this prologue sequence is the bullet system. See, ever since the worldwide microwaving incident, currency as we know it now obviously ceased to exist, because there's no central authority to put value behind it. So people resorted to other means to barter, namely bullets. Military grade rounds are your primary currency in this series, except Exodus. You can buy weapons with them, donate them,
I'm doing my part.
and use them with your guns. Not too different to how bottle caps can be used to craft makeshift mines in Fallout, although it's more straightforward here. They do more damage than the regular ammo and are easily distinguishable by their unique hit effect, which lights things on fire. But honestly, they don't have much advantage on their own unless you run out of regular ammo and need to get out of a tight situation. You're better off saving them to buy regular ammo and more guns instead, because it's not like the normal ammo you get is too ineffective. The higher damage boost you get from the military grade rounds is really not worth wasting them without a reason. Speaking of guns, there's a pretty healthy selection of guns in this game, ranging from normal pre-war weapons to handmade abominations like pressure guns or a heavy machine shotgun that works on pure magic, I would say. The designs of these homemade guns are pretty solid too, all having a distinct identity you can associate with the franchise. The pre-war selection is nice as well. You've got some goofy mashups like this P90 AK hybrid, because of course, why won't they kitbash everything with an AK? A DMR rifle which serves better as an assault rifle than a DMR, or an automatic shotgun, not to be confused with the heavy automatic shotgun. All in all, a pretty solid selection. Although the thing is, with how limited supplies are on higher difficulties and how ammo hungry some of these guns are, they essentially become gimmicks more than something useful that are mostly suitable for lower difficulties. Still, there's plenty of variety either way. With that done, the only thing left to test now is the core shooting. And it's serviceable. See, the core gunplay isn't what I'd call buttery smooth, especially considering Artyom is supposed to be a top tier ranger and not some nerd with a gun. But here's the thing, I don't think the best way to play this game is to barrel through it like a god or Halo campaign. Sure, there's the Spartan mode which essentially turns you into a god.
Now you die. That's the very end of you. Sweet. Die, Fajr.
But the best way to play Last Light, in my opinion, is to take advantage of the maps. Turning off lights to avoid detection, constantly changing cover to trick enemies, or luring them into choke points. It's not quite an immersive sim, but it has enough elements of it that warrants experimentation. And obviously, when you're busy doing all that, the shooting ceases to be your main focus, so its roughness isn't that particularly noticeable. My personal recommendation is to play the game on Ranger Hardcore mode. It takes away all the UI elements and adds an extra layer of challenge because the margin of error is pretty low. A couple shots and you're dead. But at the same time, enemies too die from just a couple of hits, so it's sort of a high risk, high reward situation. And it's so much more fun and thrilling. Genuinely some of the best first person shooter experiences I've ever played. There's also first aid kits which I didn't talk about because there's not much to say about them. They're magical syringes that can heal pretty much anything, and you need to conserve them just like oxygen filters because they're limited. That's pretty much all there is to them. Anyway, with that out of the way, we can get back to the story. After trying out the game mechanics on a bunch of mutants, we locate the Dark One, so we chase it down and catch it before it does something to Artyom's mind, which activates a flashback and causes him to faint, waking just in time to witness some Nazis capturing him and the Dark One. Not to worry though, if there's one thing they learned from their forefathers, apart from the atrocities, it's how to be just as utterly incompetent. So, not only does one of them sell the Dark One off to a Hansa trader, but we manage to escape as well with the help of a soldier of the Red Line, Pavel Morozov.
Our superiors are not on the best of terms, huh? But I say fuck that. No, fuck that. The grunts stick together, huh?
Pavel is easily one of the best characters in the game and one of the best companions in any FPS ever. He has some amazing chemistry with Artyom, despite Artyom never opening his mouth. But even then, the loading screens where he talks and the diary entries you can collect do an amazing job fleshing out how he feels about Pavel, which in turn adds to their friendship. His upbeat and humorous personality contrasts perfectly with the less than upbeat situations we find ourselves in, which despite being a pretty common trope in post-apocalyptic games, doesn't detract from letting Pavel stand unique among them all. His dialogues and comments, his camaraderie with Artyom despite his loyalty to his faction as they repeatedly save each other's hides, all collectively make him the absolute Chad of a character he is. Which makes it all the more sad what happens next, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, moving through the Nazi jail, he eventually tries squirming through a pipe and gets captured.
Wait here while I look around.
Hey! A spy! Drop him! Snake, are you okay?
So you're left all alone for a while. This is where you'll notice once again just how much detail the devs have poured into the enemies. There's so much optional banter you can miss if you just start blasting right away. They add a lot to the world, from casual checkups about patrolling to the average Twitter conversation.
If your brother was born a freak and your mother seems alright, you know what that means. What? That either you are a freak too, or your mother's a whore. You.
10 out of 10. Some of these convos also play a deeper role affecting the game's ending, but we'll get into that a bit later as well. For now, let's talk about the enemy variety itself. Of course, you've got your normal goons, which come in two different sizes. There's the plain ones that don't have much in the way of protection, which you'll encounter for majority of the game. And there's the armored ones that take a couple more hits to die, even on Ranger Hardcore mode. They also have unique reskins based on whatever faction you're fighting, be it Nazis, Reds or Bandits, and they look pretty cool. Gameplay wise, however, while their AI can be a bit janky at times, for the most part they work pretty well. They keep things pretty interesting considering they are the ones you'll be interacting with for most of the game. That's it for the humans. Now on to the mutants. For starters, there's these mutant doggos you first encounter in the opening called the Watchmen. These are the most common mutants you'll encounter in the game, and there's not much else to say about them. They're quite straightforward in their attacks, which is just rushing and clawing at you. They also don't have much in the way of unique reskins either, so even visually they stay the same throughout the game. Then there's the Nosalises, which function almost near identical to the Watchmen, to the point that I initially thought they were a variant of them, but apparently not. They too just rush you and claw you to death, with the only difference being their attacks are faster and deal more damage. They also have a green variant which has more health, and a winged variant which only appears like twice in the entire game. The only variant with some unique capabilities is the most underutilized. Bravo. Anyway, those were the basic ones. Now on to something different. First of all, we got the spider bugs, which are pretty cool. Their gimmick is that normally their shells are bulletproof, but if you shine your flashlight at them, they coil up and show their underbellies, which is a weak spot that lets you kill them quicker. So while fighting them, Artyom essentially turns into Alan Wake. I like these buggers, as when encountered in more numbers, it becomes quite a challenge making sure none of them get behind you while you're flashing your light at one ahead of you. All in all, they're pretty fun to fight, and they have some unique looking variants too. Then there's the shrimps. They're mostly found in the watery chapters in the second act of the game. They too have a cool gimmick in that they can use their arms to block gunfire, so you'll have to time your attacks right when they don't have their arms up for defense, like when they try to attack. They also have this unique variant that can stop bullets like the other ones, but instead use ranged acid projectiles to attack. And finally, there's the absolute worst of them all, the ultimate danger to the surface, Skyrim dragons. All in all, a pretty decent selection. I do wish some of them were used more while others less, and they also don't utilize the maps to the same extent as the human enemies, which is why I didn't mention them as much when talking about the general level design and gameplay. But for the most part, they work pretty well and keep the gameplay fresh and fun. Now, there are some bosses as well, but we'll get to them later. For now, getting back to the story. After we rescue Pavel, we trek through some old tunnels and finally end up on the surface where we reach an old crashed airplane. Now, this series is known for its portrayal of supernatural stuff, and this plane is just the start of things to come. As such, it does set the stage very well, as an incredibly poignant flashback of the plane's final moment starts playing. You'll find supernatural anomalies like this for almost the entire game. Some taking similar forms of flashbacks akin to the plane, like the houses in the later level called Death City, or appearing as shadow-like figures, almost resembling blast shadows from nuclear detonations. And while these projections aren't hostile per se, the way they're placed and encountered really makes them feel unsettling because they're not always clearly visible, appearing right around the corner of your vision or during random flashes of light sources. In a strange way, despite being rather out there, these occurrences do ground the overall experience of the game, contrasting the more actiony bits to shed light on the sheer calamity of nuclear warfare. So many people perished in unknown and forgotten parts of the metro or the surface that most will never know about. They didn't have any plot armor to save them. It's really things like these that give Metro its unique identity compared to other post-apocalyptic games. With that out of the way, we eventually get to another metro station called the Theater, where Pavel says he can help get us back to police station so we can inform the order about, well, everything. Before that though, we get some more environmental storytelling, like meeting the last Redditor in existence.
I live in the theater where we breathe the miasma of the decaying Bolshoi. This station's overpopulated with the ghosts of the other. But is there a place here for the best critic of our once great country? Hell no.
Anyway, this is the place where Pavel chooses to be freaky and betrays you. Something that was visible from a mile away, but it still has a lot of impact anyway because he's such a well-written character. You can still feel the bond Pavel and Artyom grew as they travel together, which if anything makes this betrayal more tragic because it makes sense. He's been a communist all his life. He believes in the red line. He's not going to throw it all away that easily, even if it means hurting a friend. So now we're under communist custody, where we're introduced to the main villain, Korbut, who seemingly has the red line's leader Moskvin under his pocket.
Yes, but now, when we are one step away from a unified red metro, you have no right to disrupt the plan.
I have no right.
Korbut is a really good villain. Even though he is for all intents and purposes comically evil, he's written in a way that actually makes him appear cunning and intelligent. His plans are well thought out and he gets his fair share of wins across the game, which we'll get into down the line. That lets him feel like a genuine threat with a clear upper hand. He's a great character, and even though I feel he doesn't get enough screen time, he makes a pretty strong impression every scene he's in. So after dosing Artyom with something, he reveals everything and is then locked up. Thankfully, Moskvin's son helps us escape. Here we learn that Korbut is planning on doing something with whatever an undercover agent named Lesnitsky stole from D6. Something that's foreshadowed in the intro of the game.
Nobody knows. Lesnitsky was at the lab. When the next shift came, the door was open and the lab ransacked. Lesnitsky was gone.
Shit! So, what's inside?
Chemical weapons, maybe some other shit. That's all I heard.
Now our job is to not only find the Dark One, inform the Rangers, and try to stop the Reds from doing what they're doing. Escaping the red line, we are greeted with the Half-Life 2 buggy. You know, if you couldn't already tell, the game is heavily influenced by Half-Life 2. This next segment plays pretty much exactly like Highway 17, except the rail car doesn't have a fucking heart attack and liver failure every time you try to turn any more than 10 degrees. And that's because here you can't turn at all. There are some areas where you can change tracks to go in different directions, but that's it. The car itself can only go forward or backward, which is fine. It works with how this whole part is designed. Traversing the abandoned metro lines broken up by occasional activity like finding a bunch of refugees held up by bandits ahead, rooms full of supplies or lore. The atmosphere is amazing as well. I really like how it progresses from the completely dark and eerie tunnels to the bright and almost melancholic underpassage near the surface, all of which is now filled with shrieks of new life as well as echoes of those that came before. I'll say this sequence even works better than Highway 17 because the pacing is a lot tighter as the distance between various things you can find aren't that big. It's perfectly balanced. With that out of the way, we reach a fisherman who takes us to yet another station, Venus, where we get to marvel at some next-gen jiggle physics. Anyway, we do track down Pavel and his squad, but he manages to escape. So we move on to our next objective, reaching a nearby ranger outpost. Before we can do that, however, we get ourselves the game's very first boss fight. It's fine, I guess. As I previously said, the core combat in the game isn't particularly its best aspect, and this boss fight is primarily dependent on shooting. There are some things to mix it up. This is another shrimp, of course, so it works on the same logic, as in it won't be damaged if its paws or claws or whatever these things are held up. So you have to attack when they're open. You can also use grenades and mines to stun it and do some damage, but no matter what you do, you eventually have to resort to shooting. All in all, this is a serviceable boss fight. It does its job fine enough to break up the pace of the game a bit. Anyway, at the ranger outpost, we meet Anna again, and Artyom starts developing feelings for her. Get used to this because their relation is pretty jarringly thrown together, which becomes more apparent later, but for now, we huddle up and prepare for moving before Lesnitsky's team shows up, takes Anna hostage and kills everyone else. Except Artyom, of course. This starts the Catacombs chapter, which is not particularly my favorite. The atmosphere is great, but the combat set pieces are way too close to each other without much breathing room. To top it all off, there's another boss fight, because we didn't just have one 10 minutes ago. This time it's a Nosalis Rhino. I have no idea why it's called that. It doesn't even have a fucking horn. Now, credit where it's due, this fight is way better than the box shrimp because it actually encourages you to utilize the environment. You can lure the rhino to charge at you, so if you stand behind these structures and move away just before it attacks, it'll hit the pillars instead and take damage. Now, there's two whole stages to this fight. The second one works more or less the same as the first one, except the arena is a bit bigger and a bunch of smaller Nosalises are spawned in to support the rhino. Just like before, you can lure it to take damage by hitting these random structures and even kill off these smaller Nosalises now. It's a fun fight. Once it's defeated, water starts pouring in and flushes you away, carrying you to the outskirts of Oktyabrskaya, right where the Dark One, Anna and Lesnitsky are. Convenient, right? This is where we get a first-hand look of what the Reds were planning. Infecting the entire station with something, then killing them all in the name of preventing the disease from spreading. It's a pretty brutal chapter which does a pretty good job of showcasing just how far Corbuth is willing to go to take over the metro, and this is supposedly just a test. Moving through the station, we eventually find Lesnitsky, who can just tank a high-pressurized shot to the head, I guess. Anyway, he throws Anna at us and escapes, while the both of us manage to escape to Hansa station, where Artyom and Anna have some... Okay, we need to talk about these two now. Their relation is easily the most shoehorned part of the game. They have zero chemistry, share only about 10 minutes of screen time, and bang each other right after escaping a fucking chemical hazard zone. And while they're in quarantine, surrounded by people coughing their guts up and dying all around them. It's like they brought in David Cage just to write their romance.
But I couldn't protect them.
I want you to give me a child.
Anyway, here in Hansa, we learned that the disease that affected Oktyabrskaya was a military-grade bioweapon, specifically designed to do a lot of damage in a short while, then go inert. So, the full picture is slowly starting to form itself, and suffice it to say, it warrants a bucket load of caution. Now, apart from the virus, there is also the matter of the Dark One. The commies plan on capturing and training him so they can use him as a weapon as well, which is where Khan steps in. He believes finding the Dark One should be our main priority because he can help us stop everything else. In order to do that, he takes us to...
I call it the River of Fate, because it can change your destiny, wash away the silt of the past, and offer the chance for a different future.
Whatever you say.
Remember the more out there elements of the series I talked about? This is where it all goes into hyperdrive. And I think this is a good moment to talk about a little problem I have with our lovable knight in shining Spetsnaz armor. See, Artyom is a pseudo-silent protagonist, except the way it's handled is really odd. The devs explain that it lets you formulate your own responses in your head, but I really disagree with that notion because Artyom isn't a blank slate. Sure, you can make choices and select the general path he goes down on, but even so, he has a very defined arc and personality. So, no matter what you imagine, it's really not going to actually reflect in the actual conversations, which in turn just takes you out of the whole experience, especially during crucial sequences. Like here, it's been set up that Artyom lost his mom not too soon after the war, and he forgot how she looked like. When we approach the River of Fate, weird shenanigans start happening, and we get a call from someone sounding like Artyom's mom, and his reaction to that is...
That's it?
Again, it's not that big a problem, but it does take you out of the immersion quite a lot, as if someone's holding a gun behind your head and forcing you to stay quiet. Anyway, reaching the River of Fate, we see visions. First of the tower where Artyom trolled the Dark Ones, second the garden, and finally a glimpse of where the Dark One is as of now. The river also teleports us near its location, free of cost. This is where it gets down. All that build-up chasing the Dark One finally gets its payoff here as we chase the train the commies are carrying the Dark One in with Khan. I absolutely adore this sequence. It's once again completely batshit insane, and the sheer scale of everything happening around you dwarfs the general jankiness of the core shooting of the game, as you feel like an absolute powerhouse just mowing every red you see along the way to reach the front of the train. So much so that it absolutely terrifies the Reds that they even comment about it in a later level.
He's not just any Red. On the Hansa train near Circus, he wiped out an entire squad. A couple of wounded made it out. They called him an animal. The creature was more human.
All of it tied beautifully with this absolute banger of a track that plays in this chapter. So, after reaching the front and finding the Dark One, the train crashes, obviously, and a major revelation is made. Khan's assumptions were right. The Dark Ones Artyom nuked in 2033 weren't trying to hurt people. They were trying to make contact with us, but their method of communication was incompatible for most people, which ended up hurting them. Except Artyom, he was selected as the chosen one, who can understand them and help unite them with humanity. Unfortunately, Artyom forgot all about it and trolled them back in 2033 thinking they were dangerous, and is now basically standing with the lone survivor of a fucking genocide. Obviously, he can't just kill him now, so we take him outside where the sun heals him. I guess vitamin D is their version of a first aid kit. The next couple chapters are heavily focused around characterizing the Dark One, as he will be our companion for almost the entire final act of the game, just like Pavel was for the first. And he too is easily one of the best parts of the game. The Dark One serves as the perfect contrast to Pavel, where he was experienced and humorous, the Dark One's naive and cynical, learning more about human beings, lamenting on the destruction unraveled by the war.
Why are your people down there now? Why so few? You humans killed all your people. Strange, foolish, evil.
These moments ring all the more deep when you consider the fact that Artyom essentially genocided the Dark One's entire species with the same weapons we used to kill each other during World War III. Even after all that, he still follows him around and helps wherever he can. Now, during this time, we pass by a depot where we cross paths with Lesnitsky again, and the overall picture finally takes shape, as the Dark One helps Artyom see his memories. The Reds plan on using the virus he stole from D6 to blackmail the entire metro into submission and becoming part of the Red Line, or else they'll be systematically wiped out like Oktyabrskaya. The next step of that plan is to map out a path near Red Square, which is where Pavel is, so that's our next stop. This is it. Almost the entire second act of the game, apart from rescuing the Dark One, has been building up to this. One final showdown between Pavel and Artyom before reaching Polis. And despite the general jankiness of the game's boss battles, this fight lives up to every bit of build-up it received throughout the entire game in a spectacular way. Everything about it is absolutely perfect. Firstly, the arena. It's pretty big and open, giving you a lot of space to move around and change position in between taking shots. Plus, the cover here is rather limited because most of them can be penetrated by enemy fire, which further encourages you to stay on the move and not get pinned down in the same place. Unlike the other fights, Pavel clearly has a massive upper hand here, and the gameplay really reflects that. that. You have soldiers attacking you from both sides of the Red Square's courtyard, either coming out of the lower opening or sniping from the windows. Pavel himself tries sniping you by constantly changing positions across the windows to throw off your focus. Essentially the same tactic you're pulling. You can easen up the soldiers pouring out in the lower level by planting claymores before the fight starts, and once it does, the Dark One helps you out from time to time by making all nearby enemies visible, as well as improving your focus by slowing down time so you can take a shot. But even with all this help, it truly feels like Artyom is the underdog here, using his big brain to its absolute maximum capacity to fight an uneven fight. All of it perfectly rounded off by this absolute banger of a track. I think this is also a good moment to talk about the music in this game properly. You may recognize its composer, Alexei Yomelchuk, from the Stalker games, as you can recognize a lot of his general instrumentation across both franchises. His guitar work in the Metro franchise is absolutely phenomenal, and it's brilliantly combined with other things like orchestral brass horns and drums, as well as synthetic and electrical elements. The music perfectly helps support the atmosphere of every level or set piece it's woven in, be it depressing atmospheric tracks or bombastic action pieces like in the train chase which I previously mentioned. Even beyond that, there's plenty of absolutely standout tracks like the Dead City ambience, or the track that plays during Miller's speech at the end. Or the general baller combat music. But above all, this is easily the best of the bunch.
I will give you a interview. Pavel, you not have to run out Sunday.
No, you couldn't say the good name. We need to discuss it. We just have to see, right? And then right here, you just fucking... What, maybe you thought Corpus was not all about you? Not in your lifetime, D'Artagnan. And never did I.
It's both bombastic as well as sad and melancholic, perfectly reflecting the context of the fight itself. Pavel may be a bad person following the wrong ideals, but he genuinely saw Artyom as a friend. Even when he's on his last legs, he's not angry or mad, just sad at how things turned out. Despite his best attempts to hide it behind his mockery and insults, the Dark One sees right through it all.
It isn't red. No anger. Just... sadness? I don't understand.
It's by far the best chapter in the entire game, without a doubt. Now, with such a massive plot point out of the way and the road being perfectly set for the finale, you'd think we should head over to the last segment of the game, right?
No.
There's yet another boss fight with a giant bear thrown in here for some reason. We just had one not even 5 minutes ago, so obviously this one feels really abrupt and random. Even more so than the fucking Nosalis Rhino in the Catacombs chapter. The fight itself is pretty bare bones too. You just shoot the bear until it does a hurt animation and opens up a weak spot behind its back, which you have to shoot as well. Repeat this a couple times and it's done. The only interesting part of this fight is how all these mutant Nosalises that usually hunt you down actually help you fight the bear. Unless you shoot them, that is, then you're screwed. Anyway, once that's done, you finally reach police station and meet Miller and Khan, where another interesting revelation is made. Apparently hidden in one of the D6 locked rooms is a bunch of Dark Ones in hibernation. Miller promises he'll open the door if the Dark One helps out in the peace conference that's currently going on. As we know by this point, Moskvin, who's in charge of the Red Line, is just a puppet in Korbut's hands. The Dark One helps reveal that in front of everyone, how he poisoned his brother who was the leader at the time on Korbut's suggestion, believing he was out to usurp and kill him, then lamenting as Korbut slowly took power right under him, while the realization slowly kicked in that he was lying the entire time. This is a really cool sequence. You don't see Moskvin much, but the few scenes he's in, you can tell he's not entirely fond of Korbut's methods. And this is a great way to humanize his side of the story. Obviously, it doesn't completely absolve him of everything he did, but you can't help but feel a bit of pity for him. So once the truth is revealed, we race to D6 and prepare to defend. This is where one of the two endings to the game is decided, hinted by what dialogue the Dark One says here. And I think this is a good time to finally talk about the most awkward part of the game, the morality system. As you might have noticed, a key theme across the game is atonement and second chances. To go along with that, there's a point system in the game that judges Artyom's morality based on what he does throughout the game. You might think this just amounts to how many good deeds you perform throughout the entire game. But as you know by this point, what you think is often drastically different from what the devs had in mind. So while good deeds do count, they're not enough to save you from dying in a fiery inferno. You need to do more, like playing musical instruments. But that's not enough either. What else then? Oh yes, walking to the back of this train in the second level. And that's not enough either. What else then? Listening to enemy conversations, because they too are human beings, right? Never mind the fact that killing them never deducts any points. You do get positive points if you spare them, but you're never given any negative points for killing them. So, if you gain enough points by other means, like, say, listening to every speech the fucking Führer of the Fourth Reich gives, you can merrily slaughter every hostile enemy without a care in the world. But you know what does offer negative points? Killing Lesnitsky, the bastard who stole the virus from D6, carried out the Oktyabrskaya test and kidnapped Anna, all without even a hint of sadness or regret. Nah, it's no good killing him because killing is very bad. Never mind the fact that even if you spare him, you're leaving him without a mask in the open where he'll most likely suffocate. Also, you know what the best part is? The conversations that grant moral points are also completely inconsistent. Sometimes you'd hear conversations and get points, while other times you straight up don't. So, yeah. This system can be really goofy and awkward. Now, I do think for the most part the system works fine enough and offers points reasonably, like donating bullets to this Redditor, giving a kid his teddy bear bag that he lost, saving people from bandits, not attacking mutants that aren't focused on you, etc. Finding rare caches and skeletons also offer moral points, which again ties with the exploration. Now, I don't quite know why exactly these offer moral points. I guess the idea is at least someone got to know their final resting place. But at least these have a proper gameplay purpose, encouraging exploration of the beaten path. And beyond enemies, listening to conversations between friendly people about their day-to-day lives offers points as well. But as is the norm, there are some inconsistencies here as well. And some of these are once again just straight up weird. Like eavesdropping on these ladies bathing in the background offers moral points, which is...
Brother, what's that?
So, yes, while most of the system is serviceable, the rough edges do stick out like a massive sore thumb. Anyway, all in all, you need 101 points out of 220 to get the good ending. The actual ending itself happens a bit later. For now, we need to defend D6 from the red line. This is it, the final battle. All of us versus all of the red line. A final stand that will define the fate of the entire metro. And once again, it's a really well executed battle. It might just be 15 minutes of shooting, but just like the train chase, the set piece and sheer scale of everything going on make up for it, and that you won't really focus on the general gunplay much. There are some new things introduced here too, like these tanks which need to be taken down by shooting their pistons and wheels with a sniper. And a flamethrower dude protected by shield carriers who can be interrupted with explosives before taking their operators out, so you get a clean shot at the flamethrower dude himself. It's pretty impressive because despite the battle only taking place in a small opening near the entrance to D6, it feels quite massive thanks to the way it's designed and paced. I love how you slowly keep getting pushed back until you're completely against the wall, which is when Miller decides it's time to rig the place to blow, then let the Reds take over. But before that can happen, the Reds drive a whole arse train down our throats, which knocks everyone out, giving Artyom one final chance to trigger the explosion. This is where the endings branch out. If you didn't get enough points, everyone dies. The end. If you had gained enough moral points, however, you get the good ending where the Dark Ones return to save the Rangers. This is the canon ending considering, well, Exodus exists, so I'm going to focus on this one because it fits pretty well with the overall motive of the game about redemption.
He said it! He said it!
Not to say the bad ending doesn't, but there's not much to say about it. It's as straightforward as it gets. Artyom doesn't fully earn forgiveness, so he has to sacrifice himself to save the metro. The good ending just fully gets the point across, as Artyom does redeem his kind in the eyes of the Dark Ones. It's incredibly poignant, as obviously forgiving someone who nuked your entire race isn't easy, even if it was an error. But then again, maybe that's where true humanity lies. Everyone deserves a second chance. Sure, not everyone takes that chance, but everyone gets one. And those that do take it may yet earn salvation. So after all said and done, the Dark Ones decide to take a leave. Given the fact that they still can't communicate with humanity all that well, it's safer for both sides to stay away for now, finally bringing the game to an end.
The Dark Ones are gone. But I know we will meet again. Maybe they really were sent to save us. Maybe we did earn forgiveness.
And that was Metro Last Light. Not a flawless masterpiece by any means, but despite its jank and oddities, it still manages to deliver an amazing experience. You can truly feel the passion poured into every area of the game, be it environments, characters, story, set pieces. And again, while it certainly has its issues in all those areas, the parts that do click well are easily some of the best in any game ever made. It is without a doubt my personal favorite of the Metro series, but only by a small margin because all of them are just that good. It's a testament to 4A Games' ingenuity that despite facing some of the harshest development conditions, including literally having to smuggle equipment to avoid dodgy customs officials, and an extremely limited budget from THQ, their publisher, they still managed to make a game that rivals every other AAA game that came out in 2013. And, well, that's all I have to say about this game. Thank you all for watching. Like and share the video and subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. Well, that's it. Adieu.